I'm sitting here outside on my patio as I do this lecture. Uh, and before I get started, I just want to take a moment to thank all of my supporters and everyone for supporting my channel. And with that being said, let's get on down to today's lecture, which is not counted as taxable income, aka the American Rescue Plan Act 2021. And that 2021 American Rescue Plan Act applies to anyone who has had their federal student loan forgiven under the Biden-Harris administration. Uh, it applies to that. You know, my federal student loan in the amount of $73,000 was forgiven September of 2023. No, August of 2023. And historically, anytime a debt has been canceled or forgiven, rather it's a credit card or mortgage or on a car or whatever, anytime historically, when a debt has been canceled or forgiven, whatever amount that was canceled or forgiven will be considered taxable income. However, for the exception of your federal student loan. And that's laws the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 is specifically indicating any type of forgiveness on a federal student loan is not considered taxable income. And what the federal government did, Mohela, who's the federal student loan service provider, anyone who gets their federal student loan forgiven, they will also, if you all can see this, receive a letter from Mohela, who is the service provider. And in that letter, it's going to outline and clearly state, due to the, I'm literally reading from my letter that I got when my loan got forgiven. Due to the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, it states in this powerful letter that the balance of your federal student loan that were forgiven is not considered taxable income for federal income tax purposes. So 2020 taxes, you better believe I gave my CPA a copy of this letter this powerful letter that I received in relation to my student loan being forgiven in the amount of $73,000, so I will not be taxed on that debt of $73,000. That's a powerful thing, people. You know, under the Biden, and people are still getting their federal student loan forgiven as I speak. I know many people who are recently have gotten, within the past month or so, recently have gotten their federal student loan forgiven if they are enrolled in the program. You got to be enrolled in the program. But bottom line, people, when they passed that American Rescue Plan Act, that was the pivot point. That's a powerful point for anyone who is continuously getting their federal student loan forgiven to know, because they're going to get the very same letter that I got, to know that that is not considered taxable income. And that basically, you know, that's power. Because imagine if they would not have passed that Rescue Act in 2021, if the Biden-Harris administration wouldn't have went in and done that, then although my federal student loan in the amount of $73,000 forgiven, without that law, I would have to turn around and would have been taxed on that money. But I was not, because of that powerful law. So, you know, and this is something that, you know, if you have a federal student loan, if you're in the loan forgiveness program, or even if you're not, this is powerful information that you need to know. Because I've heard many people in many conversations in the natural environment, social media, when they hear about people getting their federal student loan forgiven, mind you, they hadn't gone through the door, because they're talking about how disgruntled they are having to, with that student debt hanging over their head. I have gone through the door. I've gotten evidence from Mahela, the Fed loan, the student loan service provider, to alert me in this letter to let me know that $73,000 that was forgiven is not considered taxable income. And they put that in bold. They put that part literally. The amount of money that was forgiven on your federal student loan is not considered taxable income. They bold that in the letter. And you better believe I have a copy of my original letter. And you better believe when I filed my personal and business taxes in 2023, I gave my CPA a copy of that letter so they would not have taxed that $73,000. Real talk, people, this is powerful knowledge. There are so many people right now, because now they have lifted the pause off. For a while, there were no payment required on your federal student loan. Then they went in and lifted that pause. So now there are people right now as I speak of all ages who are in default on their school loan, are clueless about what to do and how to do to enroll in the federal student loan forgiveness program. Yes, it is a program. And there are steps that you got to take to enroll in the program. For it don't just automatically happen. And then there's things that you have to do on a yearly basis to continue to meet criteria to be in that loan forgiveness program. And one of those number one major criterias is you have to make 120 qualified payments. And you also have to be with a qualified employer. The employer has to be a qualified employer in order for you to qualify for to be in this program. But there are many qualified employers. I tell people don't like doing their own research. They don't like doing their own due diligence. I tell anybody, rather I'm doing a lecture or either in real person, I tell anybody to the source. And the source is Mohela. They are the federal student loan service provider that oversees all of this. They are the ones that you have to submit your paperwork to. They are the ones that you have to update your paperwork once a year. They are the ones who are going to track your payments. And they are the ones, once you have met all of the requirements, Mohela, the federal student loan service provider, they are the ones who got the power to forgive the amount of money that you owe when you done everything you need to do at the end. And they are the ones who are going to send you this letter also congratulating you to let you know, because this is a congratulatory letter. They're going to congratulate you because in my congratulation letter, it says, my name, Marie Holiday, congratulations. I got this letter August of 2023. I never forget this. The Biden-Harris administration has forgiven your federal student loan in the amount of $73,000. And it put, you are now paid in full. Now your balance reflects zero. And what that federal service loan provider also has the power to do when they wiped out the remaining balance of my student loan, they also alerted and sent documentation to the three major credit bureaus, Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. Mahela did this to alert the credit bureaus that her student loan has been forgiven. She now has a zero balance. And that alerted the credit bureaus, the three major credit bureaus, to go in and change that amount owed, $73,000, to zero. So later on, when I went into my credit report on Equifax, it reflected zero versus $73,000. TransUnion, it reflected zero versus $73,000. In Experian, it reflected zero versus $73,000. It now reflects zero balance. The service provider does that for the student loan borrower. They have the power to do that, and they're going to also send you a letter letting me know that they have alerted the credit bureaus. So now when I go in to check my credit report, it literally shows debt zero. Real talk, people. So I'm telling you, If you have a federal student loan, if you know someone who has a federal student loan, go to the source, go to the service provider, go through the steps to get that federal student loan forgiven, and etc. Meet all those requirements year after year after year until you have gone. I have gone through the door. My loan is forgiven. And this is powerful information. Many people who haven't gone through the door, I don't know what it is, they're listening to wrong information, they going off what so-and-so said on the internet. I got mine forgiven. I've gone through the door. I got my documentation. My loan's forgiven. I no longer owe $73,000, people. That's a lot of money. And what that does is when they wipe that out, what that did to me immediately is that was a big burden lift off my shoulders. That was a financial burden lift off my shoulders, because if I would not have had the wisdom to enroll in that program 10 years before I retired, I was on a mission, because one of the missions I was on was to retire debt free. And one of the first things I did 10 years prior to retirement is I sat myself down and wrote down a strategic plan on steps and things that I had to do to eliminate all of my debt. And that student loan was top priority. And the second thing I did is I enrolled my behind in the program, because it's a 10-year program, 120 payments. I had foresight. I was about my business. And the beauty of that process, because the tail end of my journey on the trajectory path of meeting all those requirements to get the remaining balance of my student loan forgiven, is the caveat to that. The last 3 years prior to me satisfying all those requirements, COVID hit. The last 3 years of the 10-year journey, when COVID hit, the federal government put a pause on student loan payment. So when the federal government did that, that dropped my monthly student loan bill down to zero. But the beauty of that, the last 3 years of me being in that program, my amount I had to pay was zero when Mahela would send me that bill. And those zero payments for the last 3 years of the 10 years counted towards my 120 payments. So that last 3 years of making zero payment counted towards my loan forgiveness. So in reality, the last 3 years I paid no money because of the federal pay anything. But because I was in the program, the loan forgiveness program, my zero payment counted towards my 120. And so I was like, God had his hands all over me. So the last 3 years I paid nothing. At the end, when I met all the requirements, Mohela went in and zeroed out, forgave that last remaining balance of $73,000. In addition to that, Mohela went in and alerted all of the major credit bureaus to let them know that that bill is now zero, and it reflects on my credit report. And a more caveat to that, when they did all that, when they forgave my loan, when they alerted the credit bureaus, about a month later after my loan was forgiven, Mohela sent me a refund check in amount of $8,000 because they said that I overpaid my payments when I repaired, which I wasn't aware of. They went in and analyzed my account. So after my loan was forgiven, everything looking good, reflecting on my credit score, out of nowhere, the federal student loan service provider, Mohela, sent me a check in the amount of $8,000 because they said I overpaid. And what I did with that money is deposit that money into my financial portfolio. So I'm here to tell you, I benefit all the way around. And that's only because I was about my business. I stayed on top of my business. I made sure I submitted all of the paperwork to Mahela year after year, year after year, to ensure that I met all of the requirements and did everything that I wanted to do until I satisfied that 120 months, and the rest is history. Because I'm telling you, there are people right now in their 20s to 30s to 40s, even older, who are default on this federal student loan, have gotten their wages garnished because of their federal student loan. They're in default. Because they're in default on their federal student loan, they have destroyed their credit ratings. And it's just a ripple effect, people. And I tell anybody, enroll in the program, contact Mahela, the service provider, and handle your business. Because if that student debt will follow you all the way into in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, it will punch you until the day you die. Real talk. But there's no need to be, because people are still getting their loan forgiven. I know many, 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 many people this year who have gotten their federal student loan forgiven because they're doing everything they need to do to make sure they stay in compliance. And Mohela is going to do their part to oversee that process. Real talk. So yes, again, because of the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, that law, that act specifically applies to loan forgiveness and that discharge debt, to let people know whatever amount that your student loan was discharged on, it is not to be considered taxable income. Real talk. So again, that's all I have on this topic. I appreciate all of my supporters and everyone for following my channel. Pass this information on to someone who might not be aware of this law. If they have a federal student loan, this is real. I've gone through the door. So that's all I have. Simplify, simple fidelity, and I'm going to leave any care of your own conscience. Have a great day.